What's up, everyone? With the NBA season back, one of the biggest questions is who's going to come home with the NBA championship. There's 22 teams in the NBA bubble, but only a few are true title contenders. So in this video, we're going to evaluate the playoff teams to see if they're contenders or pretenders. Before we continue, I'd appreciate it if you guys would drop a like on the video and subscribe. I love making content like this for you guys, and supporting the channel by subscribing really helps me to produce more videos. Now let's continue. We're going to analyze the Eastern teams first and the Western teams second, and we'll go in the order of the current NBA standings. These standings are accurate as of August 2nd. In the East, we're going to start off with the one-seeded Milwaukee Bucks. I'm sure it isn't a shocker to anyone that I'm ruling the Bucks as a legit title contender. Giannis is likely going to be the MVP for the second straight year. He's a phenomenal player on both ends of the floor. On offense, it's impossible to keep Giannis from doing damage in the paint. He's extremely efficient, and because he's a willing passer, he often finds his teammates open for three. On defense, thanks to Giannis' crazy size and length, he's a huge pest. He's great defending the perimeter, and he's great at protecting the rim as well. The Bucks did an excellent job of surrounding Giannis with shooters for driving lanes, and they have an excellent number 2 option in Chris Middleton. The Bucks have the 3rd ranked offense in the NBA and the 1st ranked defense. The ceiling of this team looks like it's an NBA championship. The Bucks are far from a guarantee though, especially if Eric Bledsoe chokes in the playoffs again. Now, Bledsoe is a high-quality point guard, especially on a defensive end, but last year, when the Bucks lost to the Raptors in the conference finals, it was largely because Bledsoe couldn't make any shots. How bad was Bledsoe in last year's playoffs? He averaged 10 points a game on 29% shooting in that series against the Raptors. It wasn't just Bledsoe though. Most of the Bucks shooters went cold, which made it easier for the Raptors to neutralize Giannis. If Giannis' supporting cast lets him down again, the Bucks won't win the title. But considering all the firepower that the Bucks have, it's only fair to label them as a legit contender. Next, we'll cover the 2-seeded Toronto Raptors. The Raptors had a great season this year. Despite the loss of Kawhi Leonard, arguably the best player in the NBA, the Raptors still managed to finish with the 2 seed in the East. Pascal Siakam emerged as an all-star this year, and the Raptors are incredibly good defensively. But I'm labeling Toronto as a pretender. Sorry, Raptors fans. The Raptors definitely have all-star talent between Kyle Lowry and Pascal Siakam, but they don't have that true superstar talent. Pascal Siakam was very good this year, but he's still unproven in the playoffs. I do think he will reach that superstar potential, but it's going to probably take at least 1 or 2 years. The Raptors finished number 2 in defensive efficiency, right below Milwaukee. Between Siakam, OG Anunoby, and Kyle Lowry, the Raptors have a bunch of really great lockdown defenders. The Raptors' main issues, though, is on offense. They had the 12th ranked offense in the league this year. Now that's good, but it's not championship level. The Raptors often fail to execute in the half court. Yes, defense wins championships, but not without great offense. True title contenders are usually both a top 5 offense and a top 5 defense. The Raptors are a good team, but they're not going to win without a true superstar or a top 10 offensive attack. I believe their absolute ceiling is the conference finals. Next, we have the 3-seeded Celtics. This may be a bit of a hot take, but I'm labeling the Celtics as a true contender. The main reason for this is because the Celtics are arguably the most talented team in the East. The Celtics may not have that true superstar, but they have a lot of all-star talent. Kemba Walker is a top 5 point guard, and he's fitting way better than Kyrie did last year. Jason Tatum was showing flashes of being a legit NBA superstar in the regular season. He's not there yet, but he's very good. Jaylen Brown took a huge step forward after a disappointing 3rd season. He averaged 20 points and 6 rebounds a game this year. You could make a strong argument that he was an all-star snub. And lastly, the Celtics got a really nice bounce-back season from Gordon Hayward. Between these 4 guys, the Celtics have a tremendous amount of talent, and in the playoffs, talent rules. Beyond that, The Celtics have other attributes that bodes well for them in the playoffs. They're a great team on both ends of the floor, ranking 4th in defensive efficiency and 7th in offensive efficiency. Furthermore, the Celtics have one of the best coaches in the NBA in Brad Stevens. Stevens is excellent at drawing up plays, especially in end-of-game situations. He regularly outsmarts the opposing coach with what he draws up. The main weakness of Boston is their lack of depth. But in the playoffs, rotations get shortened and your starters play about 40 minutes. As long as guys like Marcus Smart and Enes Kanter can give Boston starters a breather, they'll be alright. The Celtics also lack size. Dale Tice is really good for Boston, but he can't match up defensively against the true elite centers in the NBA. The Bucks are the favorite to get out the East, but don't be shocked if Boston is the one that gets to the finals. Next, we have the 4th-seeded Miami Heat. The Heat have been one of the biggest overachievers this year. Most people expected a jump with the addition of Jimmy Butler, but few projected a top 4 seed. Jimmy Butler continues to prove that he's a winning player. As usual, he's great on both ends of the floor, and Bam Adebayo made a nice all-star leap. The Heat also got some pleasant surprises in young players like Kendrick Nunn and Tyler Hero. Unfortunately for Heat fans, I'm labeling the Heat as pretenders. The Heat are a good team, but they're not a true championship team. The Heat ranked 8th in offensive efficiency, but just 12th in defensive efficiency. This suggests that they are good, but they're not true title contenders. Not only do they need to improve on both ends of the floor, but they're too reliant on their young players to play well in the playoffs who have very little playoff experience. Jimmy Butler is a great player, but he needs more talent around him. The Heat are at least one all-star away from true championship contention. Next up is the 5th-seeded Indiana Pacers. It isn't a shocker that I'm labeling them as a pretender. The Pacers had a strong regular season, finishing as the number 5 seed even without their all-star Victor Oladipo. Malcolm Brogdon has been an amazing pickup for them in free agency. TJ Ward is making the Suns look incredibly foolish for trading him for a bag of Doritos, especially after he just dropped 53 points. Despite these guys playing well, the Pacers are going to be hard-pressed to make a playoff run due to the injury to their best player, Domantas Sabonis. Now, Sabonis could come back, but he's dealing with plantar fasciitis, meaning even if he does play, he'll be far from 100%. With their top option seriously hurt, it's going to be tough for the Pacers to even win a playoff series, which would currently be against the Miami Heat. Their big X factor is Victor Oladipo. Oladipo has returned from injury, and if he could get at least somewhat close to what he was last year, the Pacers might have a chance. But without Sabonis, this looks like a team that's probably a first-round exit. The last team in the East we're going to go into depth with is the Sixers. It feels like the Sixers have the highest ceiling and the highest floor. I could see the Sixers getting all the way to the finals, but I could also see them losing in the first round. This is one of the most talented teams in the East. Between Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, and Tobias Harris, this team is stacked. The Sixers have the 7th-ranked defense in the league, but only the 16th-ranked offense. Normally, a team with an average team offense isn't a true contender. This poor offense could be attributed to the Sixers lacking outside shooting. The Sixers only rank 22nd in three-point attempts a game. They need more floor spacers around their dynamic duo. It makes you wonder what in the world Elton Brand was thinking when he thought Al Horford would be a good fit on this team. Horford's 4-year, $109 million contract is arguably the worst contract in the NBA, but there is a silver lining, and that's Shake Milton. The Sixers have been starting Shake Milton recently, and he's been an excellent fit in the starting lineup. Milton can be incremental in a deep playoff run for the Sixers. He's a good scorer and shooter, and he's shown he can go off in big games, including a 39-point outing against the Clippers back in March. This may be an unpopular opinion, but I'm labeling the Sixers as a true contender. The 7th and 8th seeded teams don't have much of a chance, so I'm just going to keep it brief. The Magic are a nice young team, but they're still an all-star piece away from true contention. Losing Jonathan Isaac with another brutal leg injury is a huge L for them. Expect the Magic to lose in the first round again. As for the Nets, it feels like half the team is out with injuries. Karis LeVert has played well so far in the bubble, but he can't make the Nets a good team alone. Expect the Nets to get swept by the Bucks in the first round, and each game probably is going to be a blowout. Now we're going to start talking about the Western teams. The Lakers are very much easily a title contender, and they're actually my favorite to come out the West. I think the Lakers and Clippers are close, but I give the Lakers a very slight edge. You already know the immense talent on this team. LeBron James is arguably the best player in basketball. He's not only an incredible scorer and playmaker, but he's really good on defense this year. Anthony Davis has also been excellent for the Lakers this year on both ends of the court. This easily is the best duo in the league. Guys like Danny Green, JaVale McGee, and Dwight Howard are all experienced and have been to the finals multiple times. The Lakers have great role players, but the main question for this team is, do they have some playmaking outside of LeBron? With Rondo out, the Lakers simply don't have anyone that can facilitate at a high level when LeBron sits. But if the Lakers play to their maximum, they're arguably the favorite to go all the way. I'd also highly advise that the Lakers don't play J.R. Smith in the final possession, just in case he forgets to score again. Next, we have the number 2 seeded Clippers. The Clippers are very easily a contender. I wouldn't be shocked if this team ends up in the finals. Between Kawhi, Paul George, and Patrick Beverley, the Clippers are an incredible defensive team. They also get great bench production from Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell. The Clippers aren't without their flaws, though. They don't really have the size to match up with Anthony Davis should they meet the Lakers in the conference finals. Furthermore, Marcus Morris has been a complete liability for them ever since he arrived at the trade deadline. At some point, he really needs to break from his shooting slump. Despite these flaws, the Clippers have the talent to go all the way. Next in the standing is the 3rd-seeded Denver Nuggets. This team is definitely a pretender. The Nuggets have a team that can be a title contender soon, though. They're nearly top 10 on both ends of the floor. They have a legit superstar in Nikola Jokic, who's the best center in the NBA right now, at least in my opinion. Unfortunately for the Nuggets, though, I think they're at least 2 years away from true contention. Jokic is a good number 1 guy, but Jamal Murray is a very questionable number 2. He was a huge part of the Nuggets defeating the Spurs in last year's first round, but he's just way too inconsistent, and he hasn't made that all-star leap that the Nuggets need him to take. What the Nuggets really have going for them is that Bol and Michael Porter Jr. are only scratching the surface of their potential. Both of these guys have all-star upside. The Nuggets aren't a true contender, but they're a few years away. Next is the Utah Jazz, and they're also a pretender. The Jazz are similar to the Nuggets in that they already have their big-time player in Donovan Mitchell, but they don't have a bona fide number 2 player. Trading for Michael Conley Jr. has been a total dud for the Jazz, and in all honesty, it looks like they downgraded from Ricky Rubio. It also doesn't help that Rudy Gobert ruined the team's chemistry by acting like a total idiot. The Jazz, of course, have an elite defense, but Donovan Mitchell needs more support on the offensive end. The Jazz probably will win a playoff series, but they don't have the firepower to compete with the true title contenders in the West. Next, we have OKC. OKC has easily been the biggest surprise team in the league this year. OKC was supposed to be rebuilding. Instead, they're the 5th seed led by Chris Paul and their young stud Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. But unfortunately, this team is a pretender. They simply don't have that superstar talent to compete with teams like the Lakers and the Clippers. CP3 was an all-star this year, but he's far from the player that was throwing lobs to Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan a few years ago. I wouldn't be shocked if they get out the first round, but that's as far as they'll go. The next team is the Houston Rockets. The Rockets are like the Sixers of the West, in that I can imagine them losing in the first round, but I could also see them getting all the way to the conference finals. James Harden continues to put up otherworldly numbers on the offensive end. Russell Westbrook really started dominating in the second half of the year after Capella was traded. The extra spacing with him gone has really allowed him to slash to the rim a lot easier. With their 5-out lineups, the Rockets will be very hard to stop. The Rockets are also solid defensively, but it's hard to see them actually contend starting a 6'5" guy at center. PJ Tucker is a tough player, When Houston is matched up with teams that have good big men like the Nuggets or the Lakers, they're going to get totally exploited. The Rockets are a pretender. Their best chance to win was 2 years ago when they had a 3-2 lead on the Kevin Durant Warriors. The 7th and 8th seed we're going to keep brief again, as both teams really don't stand a chance. The Mavericks have arguably the best young duo in the league between KP and Luka Doncic. A little known fact is that the Mavs actually have the highest ranked offense in league history, but their defense is below average. I'd love to consider the Mavs an upset threat, but at the 7th seed, there's no way they're going to get by the Clippers. The 8th seed is still pretty much up in the air. I think the Blazers will make it, but the Grizzlies, Spurs, and Suns also have a good chance of getting that final spot. Any team that makes the 8th spot is losing in the first round to the Lakers for obvious reasons. So there you have it, NBA fans. These are my NBA title contenders and pretenders. Do you agree with my list, or do you disagree with my list? Tell me in the comments. Don't forget to like and sub, and enjoy the rest of your day.